Good morning, it's April 6th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Well, the state of politics in the United States has reached the lowest level in my lifetime. Politics seem to permeate every aspect of our lives, and not for the better. I want to start out with sports. My axiom on this has been that sports should stay out of politics, and politics should stay out of sports. Stay in your own lane. But that does not seem to be the norm today. We had Major League Baseball pulling the All-Star game out of Atlanta as a form of protest against the newly enacted Georgia election laws. Democrats, led by Joe Biden, had declared the new law as Jim Crow 2.0. They said it was aimed at suppressing the black vote in the state of Georgia. The commissioner of baseball, fearing that he might see a backlash, reacted by moving the game to Denver. Now, the real funny part about this is Atlanta is a majority black town and Denver's not. And when the facts were all in, it turned out that not only did the new law encourage voting, but Georgia set records for a general election and a runoff. Meanwhile, moving the game from Atlanta harmed many black-owned businesses which depended upon the revenue that baseball games generate around the stadium. And of course, we all remember the National Football League totally embracing the Black Lives Matter movement, only to see that fizzle out as many of their fan base reacted negatively. Athletes kneeling on the field as a show of support for racial equality was instead transformed by many as a protest against the American flag. In both cases, the athletes and the fans who prejudged this were wrong, but they did it anyway. This past week, we had the Women's National Championship Tournament in college basketball, where the team from the University of Iowa defeated a previously unbeaten University of South Carolina in the semifinals. Because the Iowa team was predominantly white and the South Carolina team predominantly black, racial politics was injected into the game. I watched both the game of Iowa versus South Carolina and the national championship game where Iowa faced Louisiana State University. Once again, the Louisiana State team was predominantly black. Well, during the South Carolina game, the star player from Iowa, Caitlin Clark, basically waved at a South Carolina player telling her to go ahead and shoot. Somehow this was translated into an insult to that player. Now, as someone that has officiated basketball for many years, I've seen players do the very similar thing to someone they don't think can hit the shot. If you're a basketball fan, you'll probably remember the Shack-a-Hack when Shaquille O'Neal was deliberately fouled because he was a very poor free throw shooter. The NBA had to come up with a new rule to stop that. But because of the color of their skin in the college game, some tried to make that a racial issue. It followed into the game between the University of Iowa and Louisiana State University. The LSU star player, Angel Reese, made a similar gesture toward Caitlin Clark. Now, I looked at that as just another form of trash talking on the court, which goes on all the time. But commentators like Stephen A. Smith in the sports world tried to make it into something it was probably not. Then you have the First Lady, Jill Biden, saying that both teams should be invited to the White House. Now, I didn't understand what she was trying to convey by saying this, because normally only the championship team gets that invitation. The coach of the Iowa team politely declined such an invitation, saying it was not for them to go to the White House, but for Louisiana State University to make the trip. She said if the First Lady wanted to come and visit them in Iowa, she was welcome. Then we heard the news that Jill Biden wanted to give a pep talk to the Louisiana State team prior to the game, and I assume a similar one to the University of Iowa. But the LSU team turned her down. Apparently they were not happy with her husband's policies on certain issues. And the LSU star player, Angel Reese, said they would rather not go to the White House, but rather go to see the Obamas. Once again, injecting race into an issue where it does not belong. Moving to another issue in politics, I referenced the election for the Supreme Court in the state of Wisconsin. The Liberals were able to gain a major victory there by electing Janet Protasiewicz by a 55 to 45% margin. This gives the Liberals now a 4-3 margin in that court, and it's critical. She defeated former Supreme Court Justice Dan Kelly in the election. The problem that I see is that the Democrats meddled in the Republican primary. They spent a couple $1 million making sure Dan Kelly was the candidate over the preferred candidate by Republicans, Jennifer Doro. But liberals around the country sent their millions of dollars to this race to make sure that Judge Doro lost in the primary. They knew that Justice Kelly would be a weaker candidate because he was a Trump-backed candidate. Again, the lesson that should be learned for Republicans is that being a Trump supporter is not going to get you a win in the general election, even though it might get you on the ballot out of the primary. One other concern I have is Judge Protasiewicz dispensed with the most legal niceties and ran a nakedly political campaign almost like a candidate for governor. She called Wisconsin's legislative electoral maps rigged, and Scott Walker's 2011 Act 10 limits on union collective bargaining unconstitutional. She refused to say if she would recuse herself if these cases came before the court, which she should, because she's already prejudged them. And no judge should be announcing how they would vote on cases that might be before the court that they're sitting on. But in this case, Judge Protasiewicz did not think those type of ethical concerns were important. And as I said in the beginning, politics seems to permeate everything in life. It used to be that sports were just sports, no politics. And the judicial branch of government was not that political, but we all know that those rules have basically been abandoned. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.